Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is time to ramble once again, so let's get to it. We are back into the video game industry with a breakdown of a company that was a big part of my childhood and childhood of a lot of people who were gaming in the 90s, and that is Acclaim Entertainment. Woo! Now, for a while now, Acclaim Entertainment was noted for its really bad business decisions in the last couple years, and we will get to those in a little bit. But first, we're going to discuss the rise before the fall. You got to rise before you can fall, and that's going to be coming at you right now. Acclaim Entertainment was founded in 1987 in Oyster Bay, New York by Greg Fishbach, Robert Holmes, and Jim Skoropaski. Its headquarters was in Glen Cove, New York, USA, and did business worldwide using various subsidiary brands, including some that they bought out over time. The main ones being Acclaim Sports, Club Acclaim, Acclaim Max Sports, later known as AKA Acclaim. Now, the important thing to note is that when Acclaim first started, it did not secure any venture financing and was entirely financed by Fishbach and Skoropaski off of the money they had made in their previous jobs. Fishbach himself having experience in the video game industry, working for Activision before it was acquired and dupe-a-dupe. Activision is another story for another time. The name Acclaim was actually chosen because of Activision, specifically that it would be alphabetically positioned above Activision as well as Accolade, another company established by former Activision employees. So when people are doing quick scans through business directories of, here's a list of companies in the video game industry, this is usually done in alphabetical order. Bam, you're going to see Acclaim right at the top. This is a practice that pre-existed Acclaim, as the founders of Activision themselves had adopted a strategy naming their company after leaving Atari, because Activision would go above Atari alphabetically, and Acclaim above Activision. It all works together. It all makes sense. Now, many of Acclaim's products did feature licenses from popular comics, television series, and movies. Fishbach noted that during the late 80s and early 90s, the video game market was less discerning, with specialized gaming publications exerting minimal influence on consumer opinion, and consequently, using a popular license became a reliable strategy to persuade retailers to stock a game. In short, the few video game magazines that were running and publishing reviews did not have a major impact on what games were bought. There really was no internet reviews going on or people playing the games online, showing them off. So you didn't really have to worry about having a good reputation with those journalists and reviewers. And like he said, if you use a licensed product that can be tied into another successful company, retailers are likely to purchase your games to sell in their stores. A good strategy, as long as you keep those licenses. Keep that in mind for later. In its early years, the company entered into an agreement with Interactive VCR Games, Inc., whose bestsellers included NFL Quarterback, to produce interactive VCR games, as well as expanding the handheld game market and the console games that they would publish. One of the things to keep in mind is that originally Acclaim did not develop their own games. They were a publisher who would make a deal with studios where the studio would develop the game, but because they didn't have the money to publish it in themselves, Acclaim would do the publishing and take a cut of the profits. Sometimes, especially with these license deals, Acclaim would even go to these developers to create these games that Acclaim had already made a deal to make. You know, hey, dude, we got this license for this NFL game. Build us a really cool NFL game. You'll be in on it. Good licensing deal, good money. It was actually a pretty common business back then and a good way to run a company in its early years. Acclaim was responsible for porting many of Midway's arcade games in the early to mid-1990s, including the Mortal Kombat series. Additionally, they published several games from companies that, at that time, did not have an American branch, such as Technos Japan's Double Dragon 2: The Revenge and Taito's Bust a Move series. Again, good business. Y'all aren't set up to do business in America. We are. We'll do it for you. This leads us into the 90s, where things got good for Acclaim. Acclaim partnered with TV producer Saban Entertainment, famously known as the company that gave America the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and many similar shows, to launch Video Power, a TV series that revolved around video games. Which of course meant that Acclaim games showed up a lot on this show. December 1993, Acclaim signed a distribution deal with the European Spanish branch of Buena Vista Home Video, allowing the company to distribute its titles in Spain. So, good times, spreading things around. As the company expanded and found success, it did flat out buy out several independent development studios, making the distribution publishing deals a little easier on them, including Iguana Entertainment, Probe Entertainment, and Sculptured Software. This meant that Acclaim was one of the most successful publishers of console video games in the world during the early to mid-90s. In the financial year ending August 1994, the company reported a profit of $481 million, which rose to $585 million the following year. Franchises such as Mortal Kombat, NBA Jam, and NFL Quarterback Club were reliable, big money deals for Acclaim. Acclaim also signed with Marvel Entertainment Group, wherein Acclaim managed the video game licenses for some of Marvel's comic book properties. Thus, expansion, growth, everybody's happy. Acclaim's being in business further expanded with the acquisition of exclusive rights to publish Taito's games in the Western Hemisphere. The company also constructed a motion capture studio at its headquarters, making it the first video game company to have an in-house motion capture facility. Motion capture being a big deal in the early 90s, especially with video games that utilized a lot of FMV, full motion videos. You can see those in a lot of early CD-based PC and console games. It's one of those things that at the time it was pretty cool looking. It was basically like having a live action movie inside your video game. But new and better technology and graphics advancements kind of buried FMV as a concept. It's okay. Again, another video for another time. But it's important to note that being able to say you were deeply embedded in motion capture, which of course was also used for flat out digitizing actors for things like the Mortal Kombat series, was a big brag for their company. A less prominent but important aspect of Acclaim's business was the development and publication of strategy guides related to their software products, along with the issuance of tie-in comic books via Acclaim Comics to support their more lucrative brand names. One of Acclaim's longest-lasting licensing deals was with the WWF, now known as WWE, World Wrestling Federation, now World Wrestling Entertainment. Starting back in 1988 with WWF WrestleMania. Unfortunately, with the rise of WCW and their video games that were published by THQ/Ackie, the WWF announced in April 1998, after 10 years working together, that they would be moving their license to Jakks Pacific and THQ after WCW's contract with THQ expired. And WCW moved to Electronic Arts. Of course, a couple years later, WCW was out of business completely, so not good for Electronic Arts in the long run. In October 1999, Acclaim signed a contract with ECW to publish video games based on their promotion. However, they only managed to publish 2 games before ECW went out of business. So, again, a useless license. They bounced back with 3 titles under the Legends of Wrestling banner during the company's final few years. The idea being that wrestlers who were from previous generations and either passed on or retired, along with people that were not contracted to a major promotion like WWF at the time, would appear in their video games, allowing you to have wrestlers from different generations and different eras feuding together in a game whose story mode was based off the old territory systems. Definitely going to talk about the Legends of Wrestling series another day. But again, it was an expansion of the fact that Acclaim had long worked with professional wrestling as a fallback franchise. They can't come up with anything else. Hey, we can always put out a wrestling game. Unfortunately, with the decline of ECW in 2001 and the fact that the Legends Wrestling series was more of a niche title compared to the officially licensed WWF and WCW games, along with losing a few other licenses to various sports organizations, things started getting bad for Acclaim. 2004, Acclaim faced major financial difficulties due to the poor sales of its video games. Situation led to the closure of Acclaim studios in England along with other locations and resulted in filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, leaving many employees unpaid. This was a bad sign. Still, Chapter 11 is not an absolute we're done. It's more of a, look, we need some debt forgiven while we restructure so we can pay back other people. Chapter 11 is basically we think we can still salvage this, we just need a little patience and mercy from people we owe money to style of bankruptcy. Unfortunately, in May 2004, it was announced Major League Baseball had revoked its licensing agreement with Acclaim due to failure to make royalty payments, and the following month in June, Turok owners Classic Media announced they had terminated Acclaim's video games rights to the franchise, which was sad because the Turok games were actually pretty decent sellers for Acclaim, comparatively, and are cult classic games, which is kind of hilarious because video games were more popular than the comic they were based off of to a lot of people. They only knew Turok from the video games. They never read the comics, but they liked the games. It's the way things happen sometimes with licenses. All of this means that the company closed its facilities on August 27, 2004. When they failed to continue their agreement with their primary lender, GMAC Commercial Finance. This closure resulted in the termination of all employees at the Austin, New York studios. And prior to the closure, Acclaim had been employing 585 staff worldwide as of March 31st. On August 30th, they officially filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in Central Islip, New York. Thus, everything's gone now. Chapter 7's the big one, folks. September of 2005, a year later, a complaint filed in the same court sought to hold the company's founders, Fishback and Skorpowski, and several other high-level executives accountable for Acclaim's financial losses shortly before the bankruptcy filing, seeking $150 million in damages. This is something that often happens when you have a lot of outside investors and your company files for bankruptcy. If the investors feel like the executives were not making good decisions and lying to the investors about how bad the money was so they wouldn't pull out. Basically, in legal terms, the investors are saying, you did not uphold your deal when we invested in your company, which was to be honest with us how our money's being used, and that you are using it to the best of your abilities. It can actually be a really big deal in corporate law. Now, let's have a little bit of fun discussing exactly why the investors felt this way. Because in the last year and a half of the company, they made some really awkward decisions. One notable example is a promise to award a $10,000 US prize, £6,000 prize, once you do conversion rates, to UK parents who named their baby Turok to promote the release of Turok Evolution. A subsequent investigation revealed that those who had reportedly changed their names were actors. Thus, it was all a hustle. These were not legitimate, parents truly naming their children Turok to win a contest because they were huge Turok fans. Another controversial initiative was involved in an attempt to purchase advertised spacing on tombstones for Shadow Man's Second Coming. This one is highly infamous. There's a lot of videos out there discussing the tombstone purchasing. It's like, your poor families don't have a huge life insurance payout. Need help paying for funeral costs. Oh, we'll help if you let us advertise our game on your tombstone. So it's things like that that make you question if the CEO's really using your money well. Keep these things in mind. To promote Burnout 2 point in cap, Acclaim offered to reimburse any driver in the United Kingdom who received a speeding ticket. However, the UK government shut this down, as one would suspect the government would. In the United States, Acclaim faced multiple lawsuits, several of which involved former licensing partners. Mary Kay and Ashley Olsen sued over unpaid royalties for their video games. And another loss, along with the lawsuit brought by Acclaim's own investors that we have previously touched on, including publishing misleading financial reports. That is a big no-no. It's one thing to sit there and look at the press and go, oh, our company's doing fine. We're, we've had a little stumble, but we still got a lot of liquid assets, and lying to your investors about how much money you have. Legally, you cannot lie to your investors about how much money you have. That is a big corporate law no-no. However, probably the most infamous of all the controversies in the end is the one that not only created one of the most infamous, no, seriously, somebody did that, games in video game history, but also royally messed them over because the press got wind of it thanks to celebrity involvement. In the back half of Acclaim's lifetime, one of their big properties was Dave Mirra's BMX series. Dave Mirra, of course, being a highly recognized professional BMX biker, been on ESPN, name was recognized everywhere. After multiple games in the series, and with the company foundering, Acclaim decided to make a major adjustment to the BMX series. The game places it, besides focusing exclusively on the idea of simulating being a BMX star, as you would expect from a BMX game, the series placed a distinct emphasis on off-color and sexual humor, allowing the players to create female characters that are fully topless, meaning the game contained nudity. Which is highly controversial in games no matter what year it is. This was not a rumored new Tomb Raider code that never existed. This was not a fan-made patch like you've seen with Sims series, so that all the pixelated stuff is not pixelated. This was the company flat out intentionally putting unnecessary female nudity in a sports title, on top of having a lot of sexual humor and just toilet humor. A massive conflict of demographics, basically. The problem is that not just that this was a horrible idea, and because of the focus on adding all these elements to the series meant that the actual BMX mechanics weren't even that fun to play, not even as good as the previous entries. Dave Mirra, who was not consulted on incorporating these changes, got pissed. Dave Mirra publicly disowned the game, stating that he had no involvement in the decision to include the nudity, and subsequently sued Acclaim out of concern for being associated with the game, as it went against everything he felt was appropriate for his fans to be exposed to, since a lot of BMX fans tend to be people under the age of 18, i.e. children. This is why the game is officially just called BMX XXX. He successfully got his name removed from the game. The name from the game. It is not Dave Mirra's BMX XXX. It is simply BMX XXX. Dave Mirra has nothing to do with the game. So on top of making a game that was not that fun to play, confused fans about what kind of game they were buying, you had the mainstream press only talking about your game in the sense of the celebrity who had been endorsing the previous BMX games you had made and had initially been endorsing the game when it was simply BMX 3 is now publicly shaming your company for the decisions you made with the game and promising his fans left and right that he was completely hands-off with the decision to include the nudity and wants nothing to do with the game from now on. Whoopsie! The last major controversy is, amusingly, about probably the oldest of these end years controversies, because it goes back to 1997. 2 years after its acquisition of Sculptured Software, Acclaim terminated approximately half of the staff at the Salt Lake City studio. Problem is, this violated the terms of the contract it had provided to the employees to ensure that the buyout went smoothly and that it was a good thing for the business. The layoffs were very abrupt, forcing employees to choose between accepting a reasonable severance package, terms of which changed multiple times during the initial weeks after the layoff, and foregoing the right to sue or joining other creditors in litigation, thereby losing their severance package. It took 10 years for any of the employees to recover any of the money that had been vested in the company through employee stock purchasing. Yeah, that's right. When it was all said and done, all of the employees that chose to sue didn't get all the money they were owed. Some got some of the money. That's bad. Still, like many companies that were synonymous with 90s gaming, Acclaim has been revived in the past few months. On March 4th, 2025, it was announced that a group of executives purchased the Acclaim trademark and would relaunch Acclaim Entertainment as an indie publisher, potentially looking to purchase the former Acclaim IP that has been spread across the video game industry, as different studios purchase different individual licenses and IP ownership. The company is led by Russell Binder, Mark Kaplan, and wrestler Jeff Jarrett, while Graffiti Games CEO Alec Joseph was appointed as Acclaim's new CEO. So, we will wait and see if this Acclaim can revive the good name. Let's go ahead and close this out with a quick list of Acclaim Entertainment games. We're not going to touch on everything. We are just going to touch on some of the iconics that we have not mentioned. Besides, as I said, the previous long-standing list of WWF games, they published the NES Rambo game, Knight Rider, the Wizards and Warriors series, Bigfoot, not the cryptid creature, but the monster truck, Total Recall, which was co-developed by Ocean Software, of course, Arch Rivals, a basket brawl, Back to the Future 2 and 3, The Punisher, The Simpsons, Bart vs. the Space Mutants, NBA All-Star Challenge, Double Dragons 2 and 3, Beetlejuice, Bill and Ted's Excellent Video Game Adventure, Smash TV's NES port, Roger Clemens' MVP Baseball, Wolverine, Bart Simpson's Escape from Camp Deadly, say that 5 times fast, The Simpsons, Bart vs. the World, Terminator 2 Judgment Day, on various consoles, TNC Surf Designs, Spider-Man vs. the Kingpin, Ferrari's Grand Prix Challenge, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, George Foreman's KO Boxing, Alien 3, Predator 2, The Incredible Crash Dummies, the first Mortal Kombat game, at least its home console ports. As we said, the original arcade was done by Midway. The Addams Family, The Incredible Crash Dummies, NBA Jam through Iguana Entertainment, and Mortal Kombat 2, Stargate, Spider-Man and Venom and Maximum Carnage, Itchy and Scratchy Miniature Golf Madness, Demolition Man, NBA Jam Tournament Edition, The Death and Return of Superman, Dragon, The Bruce Lee Story, the video game, Spot Goes to Hollywood, Batman Forever, Frank Thomas's Big Hurt Baseball, Street Fighter, the movie, the video game, F1 World Championship Edition, Porky Pig's Haunted House, Speedy Gonzales, Los Gatos Banditos, Scooby-Doo Mysteries, True Lies, Judge Dredd, Todd McFarlane's Spawn, the video game, Justice League Task Force, the Sega Saturn port of Myst, Mortal Kombat 3, the home console ports of Revolution X, aka the Aerosmith arcade shooter. Strange but fun game. Cutthroat Island, Dragonheart, Iron Man, Exo, Man of War, In Heavy Metal. Whew. NBA Jam Extreme, Starfighter, Space Jam, the video game, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, Darius Gaiden, the aforementioned Turok series, The Crow City of Angels, Scorcher, Magic the Gathering Battle Mage, NHL Breakaway 98, PS1 version of Riven, the sequel to Myst, Forsaken, Jerry McGrath, Supercross 98. South Park's yes, the original South Park game, which was a first-person shooter. Shadow Man, Revolt. Psychic Force. Armorines, Project Swarm. The aforementioned New Adventures of Mary-Kate and Ashley that led to a lawsuit. Drop Zone, South Park Rally. Fur Fighters. The Dreamcast port in Europe of Dead or Alive 2. ATV Quad Power Racing, RC Revenge. Woo! HBO Boxing. Ducati World Racing Challenge. Many, many more. As I said, I'm just touching some of the high points. But that's the thing. Acclaim was putting out game after game after game after game. But their biggest problem is, at the end of the day, most of them were licensed properties, which meant they did have to share some of the profits when games were successful, and when the licenses were pulled for one reason or another, you suddenly had a lot of money not there anymore. What's the final verdict? Well, Acclaim did a lot of things right. They produced a lot of games, many of which I consider some of the best games of their individual consoles. Nobody can deny the NBA Jam series is iconic. The ports of the early Mortal Kombat games really helped push its popularity to the forefront of the industry. Bringing the Bubble Bobbles in, to America. Wonderful. But at the end of the day, like a lot of video game companies, they tried to grow over and over again. They bought more studios. They tried to do more stuff in-house. They spread the money too thin, and when the money got smaller because of growing competition in the game industry, suddenly you can't spread it everywhere you need to spread it. And as we discussed in that list of controversial business decisions, when the panic button hit, they hit it hard. Still, as I said, the Acclaim name has been brought back with new people involved who care about the history of the IP. So let's look forward to thinking of Acclaim in good terms and not, the company wanted to advertise on tombstones and put a bunch of nudity in a BMX game for some stupid reason. Do not remember the last days. Remember the glory days. Appreciate you watching. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay safe, and I will see you again.